Hello, everybody. Welcome again to webinar number 51. A couple weeks ago was my big 5-0. I was very happy about that. And I appreciate all your support in letting me do what I do. All right, today we are going to talk about some compositing. And I'm going to show you how I utilize some AI in a couple of the projects. The first one, I'm actually going to use all of my own pieces. So hang on one second. I'm just trying to get my screens all set up over here. I've got too many things open and the toolbar is on top of it. Nothing's easy. All right. So I've opened up a couple things to kind of show you what I'm starting with. So this one we're going to start here. This was my inspiration for this one. I had seen this, I think, on Pinterest. That's where I find a lot of unusual things and things that just spark some creativity. And I'm like, I have pieces that I could create something similar to that. So that's what I'm going for, my version of something like that. So I started with, I wanted to do the checkerboard floor. And I'm like, I remember shooting a car in Massachusetts that was in a old place that had an old checkerboard floor. So I started with that. That was the shot. I was trying to get the reflection here, and I had this little bit of floor. And so I started from there. And I'm just showing you this part, and then we'll start compositing the actual thing. But this is how I got to where I wanted to be. And Dave said, I know where that is. Yes, you do. So I cut out that little part of the floor, turned it black and white. And then, of course, I wanted more squares, lots more squares in there. So I then used AI Generative. So this was my original. I expanded the canvas, and I did like canvas expand, and that's what it gave me. Then I merged those two layers together, and then, of course, the colors are funky. So I selected the black squares and filled them with black. Then I selected the white squares on top and filled them with white. So we had a nice checkerboard floor. And then I decided I needed it to be wider. So I expanded it to the right. You can see with generative AI. And it gave me that. And then I went even wider, and I didn't have save the layered one of this, but I wanted to have more than what I probably would need, but I wanted to have something nice and big. And who knows, I may use this somewhere else in the future. So let's close all of those. And we will start. So we're going to start with a blank canvas. So File, New, and I'm going to do use that to start with. I want it to be 16 by 20, which is like a standard canvas size that I use a lot. I want it to be a vertical, 300 dpi, RGB, 8-bit, and I want the background to be white. And we'll say create. So that's what we're going to work with. So first we're going to bring in that floor image. Now, most of you know I work with two monitors, so I'm dragging the image from my other monitor because it's just faster. So now I want to get this at an angle. I want this to be kind of odd angles, the way that sample one was. So I used the skew tool. So we're going to go to Edit, Transform, Skew. And in the notes, it actually shows kind of where I was at, so I'm trying to get it similar. So I'm going to go kind of like that, and I'm going to go kind of like that. And I think I went a little bit bigger. Let's see, we're going to this side a little. And I know I'm going to cut it somewhere, so I don't need it to necessarily fill the whole image. But we're going to kind of get close to it for now. And then I'll show you my completed one when we're done, so you can see it's hard to recreate some of these. I actually want to bring that one up so it's at more of an angle. All right, so let's try that. So we're going to hit the check mark and accept that. And then I'm going to bring in a texture to use as my wall. So we're going to bring in this green texture. It says one of mine, and it's included with the notes. And first I'm going to hold the shift key. I'm going to resize it. And then I'm also going to skew this load first. So we're going to edit, transform, skew. Now, you know, this took a whole lot longer to do the first time around when I didn't know what I was doing. And you're playing and you're trying different things. And I think I went a little bit up here. So let's skew this first. I'm going to go here and kind of like that, kind of to follow. I'm looking at my notes. Maybe one more row up. Kind of following, you know, the checkerboard there, because if they laid this tile or linoleum, they would have probably started something like that. All right, so we're going to start with that. And then, so I'm going to come back to this layer, and I'm going to make this just a little bit bigger, so it will fill that in. And I might move that down. Yeah, that looks pretty much like what I have. So we'll go with that. So those are our first two layers, and this isn't quite to the top. There we go. All right, so those are our first two layers. I'm going to flip my page here. So now I'm going to bring in the organ and a chair. So this was a photo I shot at the old Scranton Lace Factory in Pennsylvania. This was sitting just like that, and I just took away everything except those two images. I believe I used select background to get rid of them. So we're going to enlarge this a bit, and trying to look at my finished one to kind of get an idea of size. And then I rotated it, so I'm going to put my cursor outside the corner and rotate it some. And I'm trying to look at my other screen, and we're going to make this a little bit bigger. Kind of like that. And the other day, or I guess it was last week, after they came out with the latest version of Photoshop, they now have that rotate tool. I was actually tried it on this, and it was like, oh, that's pretty cool. You can make it manipulate. So we have those two in. Now I'm going to bring in my window. And this was, can't remember if this was Scranton Lace or one of the other abandoned places that I did a workshop at. So this we're going to go, want it to be above the floor. We're going to angle that, kind of like that. Oversight. And I did a lot of work to clean this up as well. So you always want to have your pieces edited and ready to go. Then I'm going to drag this below the organ because we want it behind that. And kind of like that, I guess. All right, we'll go with that. And then I brought in another texture over the wall because I didn't really like just that green wall. I wanted it to be grungier. So above my texture layer, we're going to bring in this color. And then we're going to blend them together. So I'm going to stretch that. And then we're going to skew that as well. So skew. And go that there, bring that down a little. We'll go with that. And then I'm going to change our blending mode to multiply. And then bring back the opacity to about 60%. So it made that green darker and blended better with the colors in the image. I'm using 8-bit instead of 16. That's sometimes some of the processes will only, like if you're using certain filters and things, which I don't happen to be on this one, but a lot of things only work in 8-bit. And I'm not going to be printing this at some big size or anything, so I just left it at the 8-bit, but you could definitely use 16 if you'd like. All right, so next I'm going to do, I skewed the organ a little, so let's go back here, edit, transform, skew, and we're gonna, I kind of skewed that a little bit. So we go there. And then I wanted the wall, let's see, a little different color again. So I'm going to duplicate this green one, Control J, Command J on a Mac, and bring it above the brown. And then I changed that to multiply and brought it way down. There. So we have an even deeper green now. And then I brought in a clock. And this was one at some museum I was at. I had this old clock that I definitely had to do some work to get that cleaned up. Bring that down. Kind of like that. So Stephanie says, never having done any compositing, are the images exported to desktop then brought into Photoshop to prepare a composite or directly from Lightroom? I guess you could bring them in from Lightroom, but then you would have to, because it would open it as a separate image, so then you would have to drag it from there over your base image. I find it easier just dragging them from my file folder than using Lightroom for this, because everything's already been edited. And my workflow lately, I don't use Lightroom that much, mostly just to import photos. I do everything in Camera Raw, and then I go right to the folder that I want for the images. But that's just how I work with this kind of stuff that I do. But yeah, you could bring them from Lightroom, but then it's going to, I think, open them as a separate tab. So then you would have to drag the image in. And Bob said, can you restore detail by converting to 16-bit after? That's a good question. I've never tried doing that. I'm not sure, Bob. I would have to check that. Oh, please make sure everybody, your comments are to everyone too. Bob, yours was to hosts and panelists. Sue says, do you place smart objects? You can. I do when I'm doing certain things. With this one, I didn't. Because I wanted, everything's on a separate layer anyway, and I'm not doing any editing to them other than sizing and things, so I didn't use these. And Joanne said you can open as layers in Photoshop from Lightroom. Okay, there you go. There's always more than one way to do everything. All right, so there's our clock, so I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to angle that a little bit. And then I'm going to bring in a couple of textures over everything to make it all blend. So we're going to bring up, I don't want to bring it there, I want to above that. I'm going to bring in this one. And stretch that out. And I did, because this side was lighter, I did stretch out the sides a little bit. That one's okay. Just so it was more of the brown and less of the bright white there. And that we're going to change to multiply and 80%. And then I brought in another one. Hang on, Lorraine, I'll get to that again in a second. So I'm stretching this, and then we're changing this one to, okay, so this I want above the floor layer. So we're going to bring this down. And where'd it go? That one. And I'm going to clip this to the floor. So I only want this to affect the floor. So anytime we want to clip something to one layer, If you hold down your Alt or Option key, put the cursor between the layers and click, now it's going to take on that shape. So where this is up here, there isn't going to be any of that texture even behind it. It's only going to affect that. And then I'm going to, what did I do? Change it to, I think I got the line, the type in the wrong line of what I did. It's at the bottom of the next step, but that's okay. And then bring it back. No, that'll work. I just wanted to add some grunge to that as well. And then what I want to do is add some shadows to the clock, and so that the light is coming in and giving us some shadows on the floor. And so I just did we're going to start with the clock because that was the easiest. So I'm going to add a blank layer under the clock because I'm going to brush in a shadow. So when you add a layer, if you just click the new layer icon, it adds above your layer. If you hold the Control or Command key when you click it, it will add it below your layer. And then I'm going to grab a soft round brush, which I'm on, foreground black. Make the brush smaller. And then I'm just going to do a little shadow there like that, so you can see that. And then I moved that blending mode to multiply and reduce the opacity some, around 50, 54. And then we're going to add a layer under the organ. So Control click. And I tried the drop shadow, and on this section it did not work. It did not give me the shadow I wanted from the chair. The organ sorta, but it didn't work. That's what, and I even tried the layer cake stuff I had with the shadows, and it just was not giving me the shadow that I wanted. So we're going to do a little bit of shadow over here, which will probably be bigger. Where's my layer? That's my layer. So you can see because I've, yes, this is going to be dark, and then we're going to reduce the opacity, and then I can clean it up. And then I went real small and kind of tried to follow the chair, the way it might reflect. It's not perfect, but I'll show you my finished one. I spent time trying to get these all lined up. So let's change that to multiply, and we'll bring that one down as well. And you can, I think I softened that. We could add blur even to that one to make that softer. So you could go in and do a filter blur, add some Gaussian blur. Oh, not that much. Let's come down. You could, yeah, soften the shadows with a blur as well. And that was it. And trust me, it did not go that quickly when I did it. So, and I'm going to show you something else I did to the finished one. So let's open the finished one. And this is the one that I rotated the organ a little with that new rotation button that we have now. And you can click it in. Let's see if I just edit rotation. So you can, let's see, I gotta remember how it works. I've only done it once. If you can see how you can change like the whole shape of something. And then if you go this way, you can actually, it's amazing what this thing really does. It's like so cool. So you can play around with stuff like that. If you're subject, especially when you're doing compositing, it's really good because if you can make something match, the angle and everything that you wanted. So let's So here's everything I did. There's my shadows. The one, they're pretty close to each other. I think yeah, we'll accept that. That's the one I just did. And this was, oh, I gotta wait till that finishes. Okay, so let's check. So Lorraine says, on the same topic, I don't see where you're dragging your images to the master player. A ticket getting in the file, but I don't see where the file is either to me. You don't need to have them on the clipboard. I'll show you how you're going to do that in a second. So, all right, so there's that one. Not too bad. I came pretty close. You know, the organ I made bigger here, and it looks better. So that's the one I did that. You'll see the sample in the notes, and yeah, I could play around with that if I wanted to. So if you were bringing something in, like I said, I'm dragging from my other screen because I have two monitors. So I'm just clicking it and dragging it. If you're working with one monitor, the best way is File, Place Embedded, go to the folder, and then select what you want. And you could change this so you can see what the items are. So if I wanted to bring in the clock, I would just double click it. And it will add it to a new layer. And then it's already here. You don't have to do anything else to it. You can just work with it from here. It'll do the exact same thing as if I dragged it from the screen. It's going to put it on a separate layer for you. Okay, so that's the best way to do that. How did you get the rotate option? When you select a subject, it's part of this contextual taskbar, and I got to remember how to get it to show up. We have so many new icons now. Those are basic things. I have to double check. I don't remember off the top of my head. Like I said, I've used it once. Everything came out, and then I've been away on a workshop, and I haven't had time to plan since I got these notes done before the last webinar. Last couple weeks have been crazy. I know it's part of the contextual taskbar. So if we select that, let's see if it's that one. No, that's a color thing. I'd have to look it up. If you do a search, I know it's on a lot of the webinar. I think in the one of the blogs with the new version, I'm pretty sure I put some links to. Oh, I wanted to show you what else I did, so I'm going to just bring these over. Of some videos with all of the new options. There's a couple of cool ones out there. All right. Actually, that was the Nick, so I take that back. All right, so what I decided to do, because I wanted it to look more painterly like that sample one or my inspiration one, so I used Dynamic Auto Painter, which if you were on our conference last February, Dave did a session on that. So I did 4 different versions of it. So this was one. This was another. That was another. And that was another. I think that was probably closest to the sample one. Let me open up the sample again. It was kind of like a, just different strokes of paint and stuff. I don't know, I kind of liked them all for different reasons. That was probably one of my favorite. That one's not bad. This one's a little overly grungy, I think. But I thought that one was kind of neat. It was just a very different look. But it was kind of cool. Kind of made it more spooky almost. So even once you have something done, you can, go ahead and do other things to it. All right. So the next one, which is my favorite of these 3 projects, is the musical waves, I call it. So Now, Joanne said if you go to the edit menu, it is there too, the rotating. Okay. The paint texture, the textures I used are all my own. They're all from sets that are in my store. So this was my inspiration for this one. And this, again, something I found on Pinterest. And then for the wording I ended up putting in, that was the inspiration, except I changed of the soul to of my soul. So that was where I got the idea for this. I've seen this a few times and I was like, I need to do my own version. So this one I used a lot more AI than I did on the first project. So I did not have a girl walking down the beach. So I created that. And in the notes, I have the prompts I used. It was silhouette of a woman in a flowing dress walking away from me on a beach with a long path of footprints in the sunlit wet sand, vertical image. And then it gave me some, but it didn't have a lot of footprints in it. So I used the same prompt and added place woman further down the beach with more footprints because she was like bigger in the scene. And it's, even though you have a prompt, you're going to get a different result because that's just the way it all works. And I tried several before I got this. I used Firefly for this, which is part of Adobe. So I started with this and I expanded to the right. So I'm going to go to my crop tool. Nope. Let's get rid of the sizes, clear that. And I went this way about 4 inches. So the size of it here on the, if you look at the toolbar, is about 5.5 inches. So we're going to go to like 9.5 inches. And that gave me room to bring in my other waves. And I was going to use, I had this image, it's unedited, it's not a very good image, of a wave I was going to try to use. But then in one of the generations of the gal, I ended up with something that worked better, that was already in a sunset. So I brought this in, and you can see where I kind of placed it, and I'll open up the final and show you. Like I said, it took a lot of time to do some of this. Masked out what I didn't want here. And then let's open the layered one so you can actually see what I'm talking about. And let's turn off all this for now. Okay, so we're going to go back to, let's do that. So that's the original. And then I expanded it, I angled it slightly. Then that was the expanded version. When I expanded it, it gave me that. It filled generative expand I used. Then I brought in the waves and filled that in, put her in there. So I took her layer and masked out everything that I didn't want over here. And then I didn't like this dark spot up here in the corner, so I added a blank layer, and with a paintbrush I selected a color from here, and that's in the notes, the color number, and just kind of brushed over there in the corner. Then I don't think there's anything on that layer. Then I started bringing in the keys. So the keys are from an image I shot. I'll show you where it came from. This is a different old piano that I photographed, not the one that we used in the previous one. And then I carefully made a selection of like these three, and it took a lot of time to get rid of everything around it, and then flipped them and made a saved it as a PNG. So that was my keys. So that I brought in here with that one. And then I brought it in again, or just duplicated it, made them slightly smaller. I wanted space between it so it actually looked like a keyboard. And then brought in the third set. And then I couldn't figure out what to do with the back end because I really didn't like them just like this. I tried like blending it a little. You can see I masked out some of it. So I made a rectangle, and then with generative AI, you can see where my rectangle is. I just let it, I think did I have a prompt in here? I don't think I used a prompt. I just wanted it to make, I figured maybe it would make some waves, you know, kind of crashing over the back. And instead it did that, which I thought was neat. It kind of really made them look like they were blending into the water. So I was happy with that. Then I created a merge layer of everything below it. And then I did expand this side. She was a little too close to the edge. So I did an expand on that side. So those were all of the steps. And trust me, there was a lot of masking and going back and forth and resizing and moving. So you can see, you know, masking all of this stuff, masking the keys and around them. I did a lot of work to, you know, masked it down here a little so it looked like the water's flowing up over them and they're not just sitting on top of it. So then I added a couple of textures. This one brightened it a little, and that was this texture. That was the one I used. And then I brought in my favorite grungy border one to darken the edges a little bit. And then, let's see. And then we started on the words. So when I started typing the words, and I'll do one so you can just kind of see above it. So let's go to the type tool. I used BP black and white. Let's go to my script ones. And it's one of my favorited ones because I use it a lot. And in the notes, it tells you where you can get it for free. So I'm going to use font size. I chose 75. And the color, I chose a brown I thought would work. So we're going to type that in. E9 CA97. Like a light brown. And then we're just going to click, and it doesn't matter because I'm going to move it and type the word music. And we can say OK. And then you can, to move type when you're still on the type tool, you have to move the tool away so that you get, no, it doesn't want to do it. Like the move arrow. It's easier if you just click on the move, and then you can actually move it where you want it to be. So I did that with all three words. And then when I was trying to get the swirls of the letters to like move around, I didn't like that like the whole word was lined up at the bottom because this part was getting in the way of my swashes of each letter merging properly. So instead I put the M on a separate line and then the rest of the word separate so I could move it up and kind of tuck it in. And then I did the, let's go to the other, voice. Where's the rest of the word? Down here. And then you can see how I wanted to overlap it and get this really close, but I couldn't do that if this was at the bottom because then it was overlapping the lowercase letters and I just didn't like that. And then we did soul here. And then for the words is the, I used Palatino Linotype, which I think is a standard font, and if not, any serif type would work. And I did squish the letters a little, and I'll show you in a sec how I did that. And then because I wanted it, I'll zoom in so you can see it better. I wanted it to fit in here, and at the regular width of the type, it was too wide. So if you are on the move tool and on that line, if you hold your shift key, you can, got to be on the right bar. You can, that's like the regular size. So I squished it so it would fit where I wanted it to be. And then I did this one to kind of make it look the same as that one. But this is what I like to do when I'm doing word art like this. And if you wanted, you know, like one of these to be behind it, you could add a layer mask. So let's go to the S line. If we add a layer mask, go to our brush. We'll go to a hard round brush this time. We're going to make it real tiny. I could, it has to be black. I could brush across here. Oh, that didn't work. How come? It should show the other letter underneath, maybe because it's not right underneath. That's weird, because I do that all the time. Let's see if we move the S, or the, let's see. Now it's going to bug me because I know it should be able to do this because I do it all the time. Let's move the V on top of the S. Gotta find the S. Oh, there's the S there. Too many layers sometimes. And you know, it's just, you can hit this little arrow and close up the effects so that it makes them a little bit smaller too. That would make it easier. Yeah, that's weird. I don't know why that's not, why it's doing that. That's strange. Okay, so the name of the script font is BP. I'm going to type it in the chat box. BP Black, if I could spell, white. And there are several places you can get it for free. Be very careful when you go to any font sites that are freebies because there's lots of ads that say download, 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 and it's not the real download that you need. So be very, very careful. In the notes for this one, I actually have that, a screenshot of it to the right one to download. Just make sure that you're downloading the right thing. So from there, so after I added the type, I did do layer styles, which is what we have open here. Let's go to the voice layer. So I did a bevel and emboss. So you always want to click the line anytime you're doing stuff here so you get the right controls. And what that does is kind of give you like this shadow highlight type thing of the letters. And I just think it makes lettering step away from the background and not look so flat sitting on top of it. So I did a bevel and emboss, a stroke to give it a little bit of an outline. And you can see that around all of them. It's a little darker brown. And then a drop shadow, which is this drop shadow here. I could turn that off, turn it on. And then okay once you're done. So if I turn off the effects, oh, this was down here on voice. So you can see the difference in that word without the layer styles as opposed to the rest of it. It just looks very flat and not very attractive. So the layer styles give it that depth and dimension. And I'm going to get rid of that mask because it didn't work. So that's, oh, now I got the hiccups. That's basically what I did there. And I said, if you want to try and recreate it, all the steps and settings are in the notes. And we're going to do one more project. So let's close all these. Nope. And the last one This one I didn't really have inspiration for. I had seen other things, kind of like with portal type things, but they were all very different than anything I knew I had to work with. So this one, this one is all my own images in here. So we're going to also start with our blank document, and we'll do the same thing. And I started, the vision I had was some kind of path leading to a forest with a door to walk through. So I started by bringing in this field of yellow. And again, I'm going to show you the finished one because there's a lot of work and masking and things, but just to kind of show you the pieces I use, I started with that, and I brought in this tree and we used part of that. And then I started with this shot. This was actually the only piece that's not mine. This was a shot I found online. And I masked out all this stuff between these pavers so that it was just the pavers. And then the door was also from Scranton Lace Factory. Sometimes I just pick a folder and I end up finding a bunch of things. This was the original, and I'll show you how I modified that a little bit. There was this stuff here, more flowers, this board, some kind of sign. So I used some generative AI to clean this up and get rid of this down here at the bottom, and then get rid of stuff inside, and to get rid of those two. And then I did use a smart filter to edit this in Camera Raw. So that was the door I used. And then I used, when I was done, it kind of needed something down in front. And I remembered this shot I took several years ago. We were on vacation with some friends and found this old house and this gate. And I just used remove background, and it worked on that. So let me show you where we ended up. And then we'll go through some of these steps. Again, it's hard to show you all the steps in a short webinar because it's very, very time consuming. That was my finished image. So let's go back to the beginning and I'll show you some of, you can see there's lots of layers. All right, so we started with the blank canvas. So I brought in the trees. Then I didn't like this clear, but like gray area. So I did a sky replacement just to add a little color up there. Then before I get to that, we did the grass. And you can see I masked the top just to give it like an irregular kind of thing and kind of follow the angle of the trees. Then I brought in the pavers, and you can see why the mask over here, I did a lot of masking to get rid of stuff around there. Then next I kind of did the fence last, but that's the fence I ended up with. Let's take that out for a second. Next we did the door. And I sized that so it looked like the stones are leading right up to it. And I masked away, hide the mask, disable it. There was like a frame around the door, so I masked that off. I didn't like that. Then I did, I wanted to change it to red from orange. So I did a hue and saturation adjustment layer, clipped it to it so it only affected that layer. And what was that I masked? I can't remember. Something I masked out of there. And then let's go back and do our fence. So that's the fence. And it just happened to be like the right angles and size. I didn't change anything other than separating that from the background and, some basic, I did do like here's hue and saturation. And that was like all I did to that. So then I made the doorway, where is it? I missed it. Made the doorway white, sort of off-white. It's kind of like a light yellow. And then I really wanted this to glow, and I tried the glow filter in Nick, and that didn't give it enough glow. And then I tried several different things, and then I actually Googled how I could create a glow in something, and kind of took part of their suggestions, and what did that last? Started. Oh, I also added this lock over here. I think at the end you probably don't really see it. That was my shot too. And I added that lock to the door. And then I masked right there just so it looked like it was in behind the door frame. And then I brightened that and brightened it. So, or I changed the hue, then I brightened it. Then we created a merged layer of everything, which has our fence in it, and everything's in place. So now I started, here's where I tried Glamour Glow, but then I didn't like it. I left it here, but it didn't really, actually that was for the whole thing. Yes, I take that back. The glow didn't work like I wanted for the door. I was trying to apply just to that, but I did do a little bit of Glamour Glow just to kind of make everything a little softer, a little more dreamy-like, more nightmare-like, and I like the way that looks. So then I have another merged layer. So now I started to do this, and I did these, I believe. I have it here in my notes. Let me check, because I know I tried so many different things. Look, did the Glamour Glow. Okay, so I selected the doorway, put it on a new layer, right? And then did a Gaussian blur. So this one is actually kind of like a light blue. I changed the color of it. And then I did a Gaussian blur. And then I think these are all clipped together. That's why they're all showing. So let's turn off the folder. See if I can. No, it's going to want to do them all together. I wanted to show you each one. Let's ungroup these. Ungroup layers. Okay. So now I can turn them all off, because I did like several versions of it to get where I wanted to be. So this was the first one, a little bit of a glow, a little blur. And then I duplicated it and added some more. And this one I made white. Then I did another one in white. Then I did another one that was yellow. And another one that was yellow. And then I changed this one, I copied and just changed the tint to a light blue, so it wasn't too yellow. And then copied that. And then I finally used a brush to create the beams. And I think it was probably a little too blue. I might change that. And that set, the set that I have, I had gotten from, the maker is Obsidian Dawn, and it's $5. The link is in the notes. You can find lots of different, light burst brushes. There's a link in here. I found one on Brush Easy. It's BRUSHEEZY is a company I find a lot of things from. BRUSHEEZY.com. And there's one rate, it's 50503 rays of light brushes too that I found on there. And then I used the other set. I used burst 2, and then I adjusted the opacity just a little. I'll bring that down even here so you can see that really gave it that glowing portal. And I titled this one, Would You Dare Enter? So that was number 3. Okay, so let's go back up to some of these questions. So I did that one. Thank you. How did I change the color of the inside door from black to the lighter color? So what I started with doing down, oh, and then I forgot to, I added a texture at the end, which is already in the merged layer, but I did add a texture to darken the edges. I just made a selection of the door. So let's see if I can go back to some of these layers. So let's go here and get these back. So from here, I just used the quick selection tool and just selected, got to be on the layer, just selected that, did a control, well, I put it on a separate layer, but you could actually just fill it. So a control J, put it on a separate layer. Then I made my foreground color white. And then to fill something with color when you have transparency around it, hold the Shift key. And on a PC, it's Alt backspace. On a Mac, it would be Option delete. And that's how I made the original doorway white. Okay. And let's reconnect those. Okay. So, yeah, a merged layer. Yes, I do this a lot. That's not what I want to do. I was going to turn them all on. Okay, well, let's turn them all off. So let's say we wanted to merge just some of these layers. So let's, yeah, let's say we just wanted to merge these. So you want to be on the top layer, which is our door in here, and our white door frame. Turn that one on. Yeah, let's turn on some of these in here, because then I can show you where I did merge to. Okay, so let's say we want to create a merged layer of that before we do anything else. So on a PC, you want to have the top layer, you know, that you want selected. If you're only doing some like we are now, select the top one and then hold the Shift key and select the bottom one. So just those layers are selected. Normally I do this before I have other layers, so I don't have to do that. On a PC, it's Control, Alt, Shift, and the letter E. On a Mac, that'd be Command, Option, Shift, E. And there's your merged layer. And I always name that merge so I know what the heck it was for and what I did there. So that's how you create a merged layer. And let's see. Don said, I wonder if Luminar Neo would create the door glow. I don't know. I didn't try it there. Possible. It's worth a try. I didn't try that one. And thank you, Amy. I'm glad you love it. So that's kind of the well, not really basics, but the multiple steps that some of these take. And like I said, it's not a linear process. I go back and change things often. You try something and you go, nope, that doesn't work. Or you bring in a piece, you know, maybe like on the others, if I brought in, say, the clock, or even if I brought in the door and I go, nah, I don't really like that one, you know, look for another, you know, thing that fits that. So it's a lot of trial and error. And it's just playing and having fun. And like I said, I like to search around on Pinterest and get inspirations. I actually have a board that I named Inspirations. And it's just, you know, I don't try to copy their stuff, but it's an inspiration, and make your own version of it. And, you know, with these, I tried to use as many of my own pieces that I could, that I had. A few things I didn't have. How huge is your TIFF file? That's a good question. I have lots of memory, so I don't really generally worry about that. But let's see. Let me check the properties on it. Yeah. Where is it? I just saw it. This one is 820 megabytes, the finished file. That's not too bad. So can you do a select and mask of something and show us your steps? As far as like maybe the gate or something, or I don't know if let's see if I kept the original stuff in here. I'm not sure if I did. I don't think I have the original. But kind of like I just did with this, I selected that. Some things I select the background. Let's go back to the other folder. So with let's see who had so like for the organ. Okay, so let's bring this one in and see if I can do that. So with this one, I want to remove the background. So I'm going to just flatten this first. And then I'm going to go up here and well, now that we have this new, like the remove background, usually does a pretty good job. So let's try it and see what it does. I think that's what I used on this. There you go. Just like that. And so it makes it a transparent background. So what you need to do when you get to this point is you want to do a file, save as, and save it as a PNG right here. You want it to be a PNG format, and that's going to keep that transparent background. If you save it as a JPEG, your background will turn white, and then you'll have to remove it again. So you want to save the PNG version, and that would save it with that transparent background. And then you can bring this into another image. That did a really good job. It's a lot easier with some of these new tools that we could do that, with select subject or remove background, but with some of these new AI things just make it so much easier and faster. The select background, I don't think uses any of your AI points, your credits. A lot of the basic things don't use the credits. If you're doing like Firefly and things like that, those do use credits. So, and one of the new things too in here is if you go, let's see if I can remember where it is. There's a way to find how many credits you have on the toolbar. Of course, I'm not going to remember where it is right now. But I know there is I think before you do certain things, let's click on that. There you go. So if you're going to do certain tasks, there'll be a button that will tell you how many credits you have and if something is going to take credits. So right now, mine just reset like 2 days ago and I haven't done anything yet. So I have 250 credits. Dave has 150 or 100. And I think that's only because I've had the cloud version of Photoshop for as long as I have. I don't know what it changed. But he has the same plan and he only has 100 credits. You can buy more credits. I never have. I don't use it enough to need more. But if you click on features, it will tell you here how many credits things will be. So if you use generative expand, that's 1 credit. Because there are different ways to do them now. There's different modules in there. If you use generative fill with one of these other things, some of them take, Gemini 3 with Nano Banana takes 40 credits. That's a lot. But you can use Firefly for 10 credits. Generative upscale, which I don't use. I use Gigapixel if I need to do that. Which is now built into here, but that's 10 to 20 credits. I have the standalone program, the older one, and I use that. If you use the rotate, it's 20 credits. So it will tell you in here how many credits things will use. And if it's not listed here, then it's not costing you credits. All right. So you have to be on one of the functions that will let this pop up. And I think too, if you... Let's get out of here. No. if you go up here in the upper right corner of your screen, there's that same little box there. You can also click that at any time to see how many credits you have, and if you want to know what a feature is going to use, that's also up there, as well as on the toolbar. Okay, lots of things to play with, and yep, Pat said upper right corner. Yep, it is there too. Yeah, fine tuning them. What you want to do is you want things to be cohesive as far as like color and tones and things, and that's why sometimes I use textures to kind of tie things together and get coloring closer. But using adjustment layers will help. You can finesse the colors and tones that way. So I hope I've given you some inspiration and things to think about and play with. And if you have the notes, of course, you get all these pieces you can play and come up with your own version. You don't necessarily have to do mine, but the notes will lead you through what I did in a little more detail. And that's what helps me keep doing what I do, and pay for Zoom and all the web crap that I have to have. Trust me, it's not cheap. But anyway, I appreciate y'all being here, and I hope to see you again soon, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks.